Hi! So yesterday was my last full day of my 12-week calorie deficit, which means that today when we go out to dinner, I will be ending my deficit and I will start the process of bringing my calories back up. In the last 12 weeks, I've lost about 8.5 pounds, which is a really excellent rate of loss for anyone, but especially for someone who is as lean as I am starting out. It's much faster, better results than I was even anticipating. And it's because of the system and the method that I use to determine calorie deficits and to manage it as we go. And so that's what I'm gonna explain in this video. My plan is to walk you through, I got my spreadsheet all up. My plan is to walk you through exactly the process that I took to get myself this successful results while still eating relatively high calories every day. It's the same process that I use with clients for successful results. So my hope is that by explaining this whole process to you, you can either take it and run with it and use it on your own, or you can see that maybe my help is something that you need, and the applications for coaching are always available on my website. Shameless plug, but I am a business owner after all. Hey, as I'm sitting here editing this, I realized that I didn't even talk about my calorie deficit workbook, which is a resource that I created. It's available on my website, $11, that will teach you how to do this. It's like a step-by-step workbook that you can like fill in and follow through to teach you how to do this exact thing that I'm doing. If you need to like put it on paper, if you're a put it on paper kind of person, I have that resource for you. It's on my website. It also includes a training video once you've gotten through the first 4 weeks, how to look at your data and say, okay, do I need to make an adjustment and what adjustment to make? It's all explained in there. So if after watching this video, you're like, shoot, I wish I had a resource that I could just write stuff down and I could follow along with it, I have it for you. It's on my website. It's called the Calorie Deficit Workbook, and I will link it in the description below. I'm gonna try and not be too rambly because I tend to do that, but sorry, not sorry if this video is really long. I also have a list of questions that y'all asked me in the question box on my Instagram story about calorie deficits. So once I talk through my whole system, then I will just go into answering those questions. All right, here we go. The first question that I got when I said, I'm gonna do a 12-week cut, a lot of people said, why? Why are you deciding to do a 12-week cut now? You're already pretty lean. I can see your muscles. Like, I don't get it. And the first thing I always want to say to that is you don't have to get it. It's not your body. But the less sassy answer and the transparent truth about why I did a 12-week cut now is a few reasons, really. The first one is that I was sitting at what I would consider the upper limit of my body's like comfortable weight range. I was pretty consistently sitting around 140, which for me is the upper limit of where I'm comfortable. And second to that, I hadn't done a real calorie deficit phase and like seen it all the way through since before our wedding. So not since like fall, winter of 2022. We got married in March of 2023. So it's been a couple of years since I actually did like a true successful fat loss phase. There were two different times in between there where I sort of dabbled with starting one and did it for like 2 or 3 weeks and then decided I didn't really want to and then went back to maintenance, so I never saw it through. And I know in the 2 years since then, I have built a lot of muscle and I had gotten a lot stronger, and I wanted to just like see it a little more. And so the answer to that is going into a little cut. Second to that, just like my own motivation, is that in my coaching, most of my clients have fat loss goals. So they are doing a similar system to this. And when it comes to marketing my business, social media content, I do a lot of content about fat loss, and it's a lot easier for me to show the whole process if I can show the data and I can show progress photos and all of that stuff. And sometimes that's hard to do with client results. Like I could totally show client data, but it's just less relatable if it's not my stuff. So I thought I would take this opportunity to have everything align for my goals and for my content and my marketing and my coaching, and just show the whole process. And that's why. Another question I got is, why did I choose 12 weeks? And really, I didn't choose 12 weeks. I told myself I was going to do at least 8 weeks because I talk a lot about comparing progress through hormonal cycles. So you really need to see it through for at least 2 hormonal cycles if you're going to compare them. So that would be at least 8 weeks. And then when I got to the 8-week point, I was like, wow, this is going really well. I might as well see it through for the full 12 weeks. 12 weeks was going to be my maximum length in a deficit because 12 weeks is about as long for someone who was starting as lean as I was, that I felt comfortable keeping my body in a deficit without overly stressing it. So I really limit myself to about 12 to 16 weeks worth of deficit per year at this point in my journey. Someone who has a higher starting body fat percentage than I do is going to require longer to lose the body fat just because there's more to lose. And that's okay. There's lots of strategies that we can implement during a deficit to help make sure that your metabolism stays healthy, that your mindset and your relationship with food stays healthy. But for me, 12 weeks was going to be enough. And it definitely has been. I don't need to lose anymore. I don't want to lose anymore. Like 12 weeks was perfect. Okay. So now, how do we start a calorie deficit? Now, I think it's a mistake if you're just like doing willy-nilly whatever, and then you say, oh, I'm gonna do a deficit, and you just either calculate or pick a number and you just start there and you go. Because that is pulling a number out of thin air. We're always gonna get better results if we pick a number that is actually related to what our body is currently at and what it responds best to. And the way that we're gonna figure all that out is by looking at data. I, as a coach and for myself, I'm very data driven because it takes the guesswork out of the whole thing, it takes the emotion out of the whole thing, and it really makes it very clear cut exactly what we got to do to get results, because our body will tell us as long as we know how to regulate and read what it's telling us. So here's what I did. Back in, I'm looking at my computer, if I look down, that's what it is. Back in June, early to mid-June, I started toying around with the idea of wanting to do a cut. If I look at at that point my weight was fluctuating, again, more data. My weight was fluctuating kind of right between 139 and 140, and I was like a little bit uncomfortable. It was getting hot in the summer, and I was like, you know what? I think I want to do a deficit. So the first thing that I'm going to do is kind of take an inventory of what my current intake is, okay? To get a general idea of that, to see, okay, what is a logical step from there? The way that I'm going to see what my current intake looks like in general is to just track it. Or if you're someone like me who has been tracking, I take that data and I compile it all in one place to get like a general picture of the averages of what the current condition is that my body is in. So I took 2 weeks worth of data from June 24th to July 7th. Just what was I eating? And I looked at my steps, because that's something that I started to incorporate as well, just to see what my general average was. In the 2 weeks, and I call this the preliminary phrase, and I call this the preliminary phase because it's really not week 1 of my deficit. It's just like the setup part. So in this preliminary phase, in those first 2 weeks, my average intake was about 2,040 calories. It ranged and fluctuated between 1,885 all the way up to about almost 2,300. So that's a pretty wide range of fluctuation, which means that my intake is up and down a lot, which often means that my weight is going up and down a lot. So if we can like bring that range of fluctuation in and regulate our intake kind of at the average for a couple of weeks, then we can really confirm, okay, am I eating close to maintenance? Is this already a deficit for me? So the next step then in weeks 3 and 4 of the preliminary phase, right, I took 4 full weeks to set up for my deficit. So in weeks 3 and 4, I then regulated, meaning I ate as close to as possible that 2,040 number, 2,050, because that's an easier number for me to remember, every single day. And I monitored how my weight responded to that, because weight was going to be the main metric that I used for my fat loss results, as well as just how my body was looking, but my body wasn't looking any different in those 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks of regulating my intake, my weight stopped fluctuating so much, and it started to regulate right around 139 and a half. That indicates to me that that 2,050-ish is right in my maintenance range. Cool. Now I have confirmation of what my maintenance is, because my weight was maintaining. I have confirmation of what my maintenance is, and I can use that to drop into a deficit that I can be confident in is a deficit for my body, because I have the experiential data to say, yep, I maintain here. Once I had that 4 weeks of preliminary time, now I'm ready to drop into a deficit, and I know it's going to be a lot more effective than if I had just guessed it for those 4 weeks and like wasted time not being in the right zone. So I like to start people anywhere between about a 10 to 15% deficit. If your starting body fat percentage is higher, we might go to 15% deficit. If it's lower, we might go to a 10% deficit. So I was looking at a 10 to 12% deficit. So that means 10 to 12% lower than my maintenance. So lower than that 2,050 number, which for me set my range at 1,750 to 1,850 for calories. And then we also always look at protein. Protein, I'm looking at about 1 gram per pound of body weight is what I aim for. So I was looking to hit about 130 to 140 grams of protein. Okay, so those are my starting targets. 1,750 to 1,850 calories, 130 to 140 protein. So now I'm officially starting my 12-week cut, and from weeks 1 to 4, my only goal is to be as close as possible to 1,750 to 1,850 range, be in that range every single day, and hit my protein every single day. One thing I also added into my cut was a step count, because I previously had not been regulating my steps at all. It'd just been like, whatever, I just try to be generally active, but I wanted to further regulate my activity level to help make sure that my deficit was actually a deficit. So I set a 10,000 step goal. The reason why I set 10,000 steps is because prior, when I was doing all of that preliminary data, I saw that my average was anywhere between 7,500 to 8,500. So increasing it to 10,000 was a logical step. If your average steps before you start is like 3,000, then going to 10,000 is going to be really overwhelming. So make a logical step, right? Increase something that makes sense. Maybe go to 5,000 and then hold it there for a while. You can always increase steps later, but doing too big of a jump too quickly is just overwhelming and it's hard to stay consistent with. So 4 weeks in a row, and I was not going to change those targets for the first full 4 weeks because we need to see it through. We need to be consistent. And bodies generally need anywhere between 5 to 10 days of consistent conditions before they start to make adaptations, which means if something's not working after 7 days, like chill the fuck out and just stay consistent a little bit longer and see if it happens. So I was committing to those for 4 weeks. It's the same thing that I make my clients do. I am not changing your macros for the first 4 weeks. I need to see good adherence and we need to see it out for 4 weeks to see how your body actually adapts to that consistent condition. So in the first 4 weeks, my average weight went from that 139.5 when I started down to, by the end of week 4, 135.5. So I dropped 4 pounds in 4 weeks. That's ideal. And you'll notice when I put my weight chart up, it didn't happen like straight down, right? That never happens. It was fluctuating. It would drop and then it would come up and then it would drop and then it would come up. That's why I hold steady for 4 weeks so that we can like push through those moments where we're like, oh, I'm plateauing, it's not working. It is working. It just takes sort of this alignment. All the stars have to align for the scale to go down. And that includes calories, steps, water, sleep, hormone fluctuations, like it all has to align. So at the end of those 4 weeks, when I reflect and I say, okay, am I getting the results that I want in a healthy rate at these target numbers? Yes, I am, which means I don't need to change them. So going into the second 4 weeks, I kept them the same because my body was getting the results that I want. I don't need to drop calories unless I need to drop calories, and I didn't need to. So in the second 4 weeks, my average weight, in week 5, it jumped back up to 136.2, but then by the end of week 8, it was 133.5. So that's another 3 pounds in 4 weeks. Again, really excellent rate of loss. So my data has shown over the whole 12 weeks that 1750 to 1850 is a really appropriate deficit for me. Heading into my third 4 weeks, it dropped again another, let's see, I went from 133.7 down to 131.7. So I'm still losing at this point. And so everything has just stayed consistent. And the key for everyone all the time, the key is just to stay freaking consistent and push through. If the trend, we don't care about those daily fluctuations. If the trend is going in the direction that we want, then we're all good. If the trend is giving us trouble and you can say that you're 100% on point, then we need to make some adjustments. But I didn't need to make some adjustments. Now going back to that 100% on point thing, I was not 100% on point, but I was on point enough, okay? So over the course of the 84 days in 12 weeks, 84 days, I had 5 days with untracked meals that were like dinners or events out where I just didn't track my dinner, so I was probably off my target, 5 of those days. And 5 other days where I was over the 1850 target, but not over my maintenance. So I was like over the target, but I hadn't jumped back up to like the 2100 or whatever. So that is 10 days that I would consider off plan, okay? 10 days out of 84 makes my adherence percentage 88%. So I was on point 88% of the time, and that is enough. 88% is like ideal. I always tell clients I want 85 to 90% adherence. I don't even want 100% adherence because to me, that means that you're missing out on like life events. You're sacrificing too much. And to be quite honest, if I had tracked those like 5 days that I chose to just not track, if I had tracked and forced myself to stay on plan, my results really wouldn't have been any different than they are now. But I got to enjoy those experiences. It was like my dad's birthday dinner. I went to a festival with some friends. Andrew and I just had a couple of date nights. Like those are things that are me living my life to the fullest, but it's just a few occasions in the course of this phase. I couldn't do that 2 or 3 nights every week and expect to see results, but I can do it 5 times or even 10 times if we count those other days too throughout the course of the 12 weeks and everything's fine. So like you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough for results. And this has been good enough for my results. I do want to draw a little bit of a closer attention to, just for a second, to my weight chart because of how many points throughout the course of this. And let me scoot over. I'll put it big up here. How many times I saw drops and then blips back up. Like my weight loss clearly has a pattern, okay? And that pattern is something that I can identify and I can see how it plays out over several cycles, like hormonal cycles, which gives me so much empowered knowledge of how my body behaves in fat loss that if I were in a longer term fat loss journey and I was going to do this for like 6 months or a year, would help me to push through those times where I'm like so frustrated because my weight is up, even though I'm doing everything right. It just happens. It's part of a normal human experience, especially if you are someone who menstruates. So having the data, the consistent data, and having seen this pattern is really just like reassuring that everything's fine. So that's the whole thing. I will be going into a reverse diet to help bring my calories back up to maintenance so I can maintain my results. My goal is to like stay this lean-ish into future months, especially we leave for vacation in a month. So I definitely want to maintain this until we leave for vacation. Once we go on vacation, I will not be tracking shit, but I do want to maintain this. One note to make about maintenance is that it's not linear. Just like fat loss isn't linear, maintenance is also not linear. So I'm sitting right now about like 131 and a half. As I start to increase my calories, as long as my weight stays like maybe under 134, like if I stay between 131 and a half and 133 and a half, that's maintaining. And I'm still maintaining my loss because like some fluctuation is normal. And I will be outlining my reverse diet process and how I bring myself back up to maintenance in future social media posts, as well as probably a YouTube video. So stay tuned for that. But that's the whole calorie deficit, my whole calorie deficit journey so far, how I did it and how I guided myself through it. If I left anything out or you have questions, put them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Now, speaking of questions, let me grab my phone. Yesterday on my Instagram, was that yesterday? Yeah. I put like a question box and said, ask all your questions about calorie deficits. So I'm gonna just rapid fire answer these questions that people left. No gatekeeping, I'm just gonna give you my best answer. I got quite a few of them, so I'll just go through it in no particular order. I got a lot of questions about reverse dieting and if I'm gonna share my reverse dieting process. Of course I am. Of course I'm gonna share everything. But what is reverse dieting? Reverse dieting is just the name for when you increase your calories back out of a deficit, back up to maintenance. If dieting is decreasing your calories, reverse dieting is bringing them up. Doing it kind of systematically in the same way that doing a deficit systematically, it's just more gentle on your body. So your body's gonna adjust a little bit gentler to those incremental increases in calories. And so we see a lot less drastic fluctuation on the scale. So that's why we're gonna do that. Now I only have, like I said, a month before I get to vacation, so I don't have quite as long to do the reverse diet, but my deficit stayed so moderate the whole time, gentle, shallow of a deficit, that it really is only gonna take me about a month to get back up to maintenance. So how often do you cut? How long do you cut for? Reasons for a cut phase. I think I answered this already at the beginning, but I do like to say that for me, with how relatively lean I am, I don't want to cut more than once a year. Once you get to a point where you're happy with your body composition and like you're at a healthy, body fat percentage and all of that, you should be at maintenance the vast majority of the time because that's what keeps you healthy, it keeps you performing, it keeps you growing and improving. We should not be at a deficit all the time, forever. So I really only want to keep myself in a deficit for about 12 weeks per year, just based on like where I'm at. And so the end goal should always be to be at maintenance most of the time. How long should someone stay in a deficit? The higher your body fat percentage starting, the more weight you have to lose, the longer it's going to take you. So you really can stay in your deficit, and you're going to have to stay in the deficit until you lose what you want to lose. Now, there are times where you're going to want to take diet breaks or do refeeds and have moments, periods of time at maintenance, again, to keep, your system healthy, your metabolism healthy. But how and when to implement those things, it just really depends on the person and how their progress is going and how they're feeling and what their like biofeedback is. Once you hit your new maintenance calories, do you expect to gain any fat? So no, by definition, if you're eating at maintenance, you are not gaining fat. If you are gaining fat, then you are eating at surplus. When you are increasing your calories back up, you might see some weight fluctuation on the scale, and that's just your body responding to, a new condition, adjusting to a new intake, but that usually settles back down. So I should not be gaining any fat because I'm not going to take my calories past maintenance and into a surplus. Do you expect your new maintenance to be the same pre-cut or lower? For me, I expect my maintenance to be about the same. Mostly because I only lost 8 pounds, which is not a very high percentage of my body weight. And I also started increasing my step count, which increased my activity level. So I think my maintenance is going to be about the same. And I do plan to maintain my 10,000 steps a day goal after my deficit. But if you have lost a significant amount of weight, if you lost more than 10% of your body weight or more than that, your maintenance could be different, which is part of one of the benefits of a reverse diet, of incrementally increasing your calories, is so you can, again, be data driven and monitor your body's response so that you can pinpoint when you get to maintenance or when you surpass it, and then when you can pull back and you know what your maintenance is. So that's like one of the benefits of reverse dieting, is actually being able to experience and pinpoint what your maintenance is. And then the follow-up question to that one was, when do you stop increasing calories in a reverse diet? When your weight starts trending up. And like trending and staying up, then you know you've actually surpassed your maintenance, and then you just pull back a little bit and then you ride it out there, and that's your maintenance. Was there anything you felt unhappy with in your cut? No, my cut went so much better than I expected. Because I started out relatively lean, I fully expected to only lose like 3 or 4 pounds in 12 weeks. So the fact that I lost as much as I did, and it was as easy as it was, and my calories stayed, I didn't have to drop my calories at all, was a pleasant surprise. But it's because of how consistently I was eating and fueling prior that my deficit was so effective. Do you ever adjust as you go along in your cut, or do you always try to stay with one goal the whole time? So my calorie target stayed the same the whole time because my body was still making progress. So that's why we gather that response data, is so we can read it and make those adjustments. So if at any point I had gone 3 to 4 weeks without seeing any trend down, because there were, 1 to 2 weeks where my weight was not trending down, but if in a 3 to 4 week time period I wasn't starting to see that go down, I would have made an adjustment, and it would have been responsive to what the average was that I was eating. So if I had been eating at an average of 1850 and my weight wasn't going down, I would then make changes to my nutrition to bring that average intake to be 1750, and then see how my body responds to that. So that's kind of why we do this data-driven approach. Also, why it's super helpful to take a weekly average of your weight and use that to compare for progress, because we get a little bit too bogged down in the daily weight fluctuations. But if you look at the weekly average, you'll see, like, even in my data, there were never more than 2 weeks in a row where things weren't trending down. So as long as we see that, and it's the same thing with my clients, as long as we see that, we're actually good, and you just need to be consistent. Did you ever deal with mental hunger? No, not so much. I eat food that I really like. If you see in my full days of eating, I eat really high volume balanced meals. So I was pretty full and satiated. There were a couple of days where I would get ravenous right before dinner. But then once we had dinner, I was fine. And that's normal in a cut. Your hunger is going to be elevated because you're essentially not depriving your body, but giving your body less than it needs. So your hunger is going to be elevated, but it should be manageable with good meal timing and good meal balance, so that you're not just hungry all the time, or going to bed hungry. How to deal with sugar cravings? Eat some sugar. I am not one to not have a sweet treat, right? I need to end every meal with a sweet treat, but as long as it's calorically appropriate and it fits into my deficit, that's totally fine. I totally can. So I'm gonna have a couple Oreos or a little mini ice cream cone, and I'm gonna satisfy my sweet tooth consistently throughout the day so that I don't binge at night. That's that's how I deal with it. What do you use for electrolytes? I am not taking electrolytes right now. I take electrolytes during the summer when it's hot as balls out in the gym garage and I'm sweating profusely for more than an hour. I will take electrolytes, but as the weather has gotten cooler, I've stopped doing that. I think electrolytes are one of those supplements that people are kind of misusing, because if you're not sweating profusely and then you don't need to replenish the electrolytes, you're probably getting plenty of salt and stuff from your food. So I don't use them right now because it's not that hot out in the garage. Lots of questions about reverse dieting. I am gonna share all of it, I promise. Where to start if you're overwhelmed with getting started? Watch this video, or watch, I have a whole playlist on TikTok called FAQs of diet and macros. Watch those videos. I hope that the way that I explain it makes sense, and then you can see how you can take action and do something similar for yourself. I can't wait to see how you maintain. Will you change your steps/cardio? So I'm gonna maintain my 10,000 step goal per day, mostly because I wanna maintain the activity level. I find with my job, it's pretty easy to be sedentary, especially as the weather gets colder. So I'm gonna hold myself to 10,000 steps to keep that regulated high. When it comes to cardio, during my deficit, I was doing all moderate intensity, low impact cardio. So all treadmill walking, incline, power walking on the treadmill. I was not doing any of my intervals or conditioning, because those kinds of workouts make me so hungry, and it is so hard to maintain a deficit when you're that hungry. So during my cut, I actually decreased the intensity of my cardio and did just moderate intensity, low impact. What I will do when I get back to maintenance and back to more of a performance phase is increase or reintroduce the higher intensity conditioning stuff. So I'll do my treadmill intervals, and I will also do some conditioning workouts, which I'm excited about. I kind of miss them. They're fun workouts. It just is really hard for me to maintain a deficit while doing those. And my app, my workout app, whenever it's coming, we're working on it, I promise, will have the conditioning workouts in it, and I'm super pumped to run that program and do that conditioning. Okay, I think that about answers it. I mean, it answers all the questions I got on that Instagram. So if you have a question that I didn't answer in this long video of rambling, please leave it in the comments and I'll try to answer it, or I'll try to make another video about it. Like I said, I will be sharing my reverse diet process on here and on social media, all the social medias. Social medias? Yeah. So make sure that you're subscribed here and you're following me on TikTok, on Instagram, because that is coming up. I hope it was helpful. Now I have to edit this, which should be fun. Let me know if you have any questions or if I can ramble about anything else for you. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for seeing me through this cut. Make sure you're subscribed. Love ya.